This conference will now be recorded.
So in our previous class, we're working with validations, right? So there where we can able to go for uh, edit validate as well as the obj validate, and sometimes we can able to go for constraints also. Okay, but out of these three, declare constraints will not be calling it anywhere. We'll be just defining that particular rule, and based on the properties what we're defining, automatically that rule will be monitored by the properties. The properties will be monitored by one network called declarative network. Okay, whereas with obj validate or the edit validate, we have to create the rules as well as we have to refer it somewhere, either in the flow action or at the activity or another validate rule or across the property level. But with this declare constraints, we need not refer it anywhere. Just a creation of that particular property is enough, particular rule is enough. So within that rule, we whatever the things we are defining, at least we have to define with for more than one property, and based on the conditions, if that condition is meeting, then automatically one network will be triggered. So what is that network? That network will be like a declarative network. So declarative network will be there in PRPC, and it will be monitoring what are all the things we are defining as part of this declarative rules. So in declarative network, we'll be having 6 rules. That is declare expression, declare on change, okay, and declare constraints, declare trigger, and declare index. Apart from this, there will be one more declarative rule, that is declare pages. So we have already seen what is declare pages. So the data pages are also called as an declare pages, right? Till the version number 6, we used to call these data pages as declare pages. So the data pages are also will be running under declarative network only. Okay, so this is not important as of now. So there will be these, so these are all the main rules that will be running under declarative network. So what is the importance of this declarative network? So whenever we create any of these rules, and it will be having some of the properties defined, the first 3 rules, so declarative expression or the trigger or the constraints, these 3 rules will be dealing with the properties only. Okay, so this is for showing some error messages on the properties, and this is for the monitoring, the same for properties, and this is also related to properties only. All these 3 rules will be related to the properties. So if any of the property is defined within these rules, either constraint or on change or expression, or all the time these properties are to be monitored under one network. So declarative network will be monitoring all the rules which are defined out of these 3 declare rules. Okay, so if the value is getting changed, or if anything seems to be done from the end, if it is defined as per the conditions, then declarative network will be triggering these rules automatically. So these rules will not be referred anywhere. So we'll be just creating these rules, will not be calling it on any property. Okay, so that is the importance of this declarative network. So declare constraints is one of the rule that can be created under declarative network, that will be executed under declarative network. And here if we just define the properties, like if gender is equal to male and if age is greater than 21 only, I have to accept him. So that will be monitored how. So we are not calling this declarative rule on any of the property like gender or male, but still we are getting the proper output. Okay, so all the time the properties, the 2 properties what are defined as part of this declarative constraints, whenever they are getting changed, then declarative network will be monitoring those 2 rules, those 2 property rules, and it will be executing this declarative constraint rule. Automatically it has to throw some error message. Okay, so the main purpose of this declare constraints is like throwing some error messages based on the conditions, and when the combination of properties or the conditions is meeting. So this is the purpose of showing some error messages based on the property values. And the purpose of this declare on change. Suppose I should not be calling this declare on change on any of the rule, right? So if I in this declare on change, if I'm trying to refer one property, so just like for declare constraints, in this declare on change, if I'm trying to define one property, and whenever the value of that property is getting changed, okay, then automatically declare on change rule will be triggered, and it will be triggering one activity rule. Okay, So declare on change also deals with the properties only. And if I define any property here like male or female, so if the value, if I'm trying to change from male to female, so meaning there is one change happening. So whenever the value of this property is getting changed, if that property is defined in this network declare on change rule, then declarative network will be executed and it will be running this declare on change rule, and it has to run one activity as part of this. So within this activity, if you want to perform anything, that has to be defined there. Okay, so that's the importance of declare on change. And similarly declare expression. So this mainly will be using in order to perform any kind of operations like mathematical operations, or if you want to show some kind of age calculations, or some kind of uh, calendar date calculation. So these kind of mostly we'll be using for operations or calculations. Okay, so here it will be dealing with the properties only. Suppose with this declare expression I'm giving something like total is equal to income plus expenditure. I'm sorry, savings plus expenditure. If I define something like this, so savings is one of the property and expenditure is another property, let us say. And based on this, if I want to calculate the total value, total income, then what I have to do, I'll be considering this as a target property, and this should be considered as an input property, and this is also to be considered as an input property. So whenever we are defining one declare expression rule, it has to be defined with target properties as well as the source property, input properties. Okay, so this declare expression will be always monitoring these input properties. Based on these input properties, total value will be automatically changed. Suppose if the savings property is there in the first screen and the expenditure property is there in the last but one screen, and in the last screen if you want to show something like total, okay, so total value we will not be setting it anything, we need not set it anything. Okay, so in the first screen itself, if you're trying to assign some value like 1000 to the savings, automatically we will be having total value as 1000 in the clipboard. So it will be taking this as in blank and it will be having 1000 here. So if any of the property is getting changed, if any of the property which is considered as an input property to this declare expression, if it is getting changed, automatically the target property has to be calculated. Okay, so in one complete work object ID, in the same example, in the whole complete work object ID, if I'm giving savings property in the first screen and expenditure in the last screen, how the total will be calculated? Total has to be calculated 2 times. Okay, as soon as we enter the savings property, whenever this value is getting changed, is getting updated, then declarative network has to monitor this property, right? And as well as this property also, whenever this is getting changed in the screen number 1, automatically it has to calculate the expression rule. Based on this expression rule, total has to be calculated. And when we're trying to add this value or enter some value here, then also it has to monitor the declare network and it has to run this declare expression rule, and total value will be calculated. Okay, so in the whole work object transaction we will be having this particular declare expression executed 2 times. So if I'm having 2 more input properties, so it has to monitor all the input properties. Whenever any of the input properties getting changed, target property has to be calculated. Okay, so this kind of thing is called as a forward chaining. So what is forward chaining? Forward chaining meaning if any of the expression, if any of the rule is monitoring input properties and based on the input properties, target properties getting calculated, those kind of behavior is called as a forward chaining. Okay, so if any of the behavior is monitoring the target property, then it will be considered as a backward chaining. We'll discuss in detail about the backward chaining in tomorrow's class. Okay, so you understood about this declare expression, right? Suppose if I have 10 to 15 values, okay, 10 to 15 values, this example will be mostly used in the online shopping. So in the online shopping, at the last screen we'll be having something like cart screen, right? So in the shopping cart we'll be having something like product quantity, let us say, and price. So you can able to go for total. Okay, this will be considered as a target. So this will be considered as one of the input, and this will be considered as another input. Okay, so if the price is almost like 1000, let us say, and the product quantity is 1, automatically total has to be calculated. Total will be calculated like 1000. Okay, and if you're trying to change the product value to 5, then automatically total value will be calculated to 5, meaning this will be considered as an one input property and this will be considered as an another input property. If you're trying to change either input 1 or input 2, target value will be automatically changed. Okay, so in this whole process, do we really require going for and declare expression? So can't we achieve the same using activities or any other rules? So we can able to do the same. We can able to achieve the same using activities also or some other rules also. There is no need of going for declare expression in this perspective. Why? Because on change, I mean, whenever I'm trying to change the value from 5 to 6, okay, this will be one of the control. On this control, I can able to run one on change activity. Okay, within this on change, I will be running one activity, and activity can be directly copying this data and it can able to perform some mathematical operations. I can able to go for on change on this as well as on change on this also. I can able to calculate this value. But if I'm having some hundreds of values to be calculated, I cannot able to go for 100 activities separately, and I cannot able to go for each and every time refreshing. So that will be very, very difficult. So for one or two properties, we can able to manage going for on change activity or data transform or any other rule. Why? Because as soon as we change, there should be some action taken, right? So that is the thing, we can able to go for on change in this case. But in the real time, if we're having more values, then each and every time going for an activity creation is not at all possible and not at all advisable. So that is the reason in this kind of scenarios where the target value has to be calculated automatically when our input value is getting changed, we have to go for declare expression. Okay, clear? Any doubts so far?
Clear.
So understanding now? Uma, you also clear, right? So there will be something other like
I'm
declare
following.
on also. So earlier we have discussed the importance of declare constraints, right? So this is something related to declare expression, and there will be something related to declare on change. So what is this on change do? On change has to also monitor the properties. So all these three has to monitor the properties only. So here we'll be defining some input properties and the target properties, and here also we'll be defining some properties based on the conditions. We'll be throwing some messages, and here also it has to monitor some properties. So what does this rule importance is? If we define any of the property here, okay, whenever the property value is getting changed, by the name itself we can able to understand. So whenever the property value is getting changed, it might be the drop down radio button or anything. So whenever the value is getting changed, automatically on change rule will be triggered as part of this declarative network. So what, after triggering, what does this do? So this will be running the activity. So that is the only option for this. Okay, so this is the importance of declare on change. This is something related to declare expression, and we have already seen something like declare constants, and rest of these two, declare trigger and declare index, these two will be dealing with the databases. So when our database table is altered or if we're trying to make any modifications, these will be triggered automatically. This we'll discuss at the last. Okay, now we'll discuss something about declare expression. So declare expression has to be have input properties as well as the target properties, and whenever the target value is getting calculated automatically as per the input values, this kind of behavior is called as a forward chaining. Interface they'll ask you. Okay, so if it is monitoring only the target values, this will be considered as a reverse, I mean backward chaining. So in this example, what we're discussing now, or this example, target value has to be calculated on change of property input values, but reverse, we are not trying to go for the reverse. Input will be changing, target will be changed. So this is called as a forward chaining. Okay, now I'll show you one small example. We'll be working on one requirement where we can able to make use of this declare expression to monitor some properties. Okay, so this is our first screen, right? So my requirement here is, as soon as I run the work object ID, I'll be getting this screen. And now this will be something related to validations, but not exactly. Okay, my requirement here is, as soon as I change the, as soon as I enter the date of birth property. Okay, so date of birth should not be future date. I think we can able to restrict it from validations. And if the user is selecting any of the date of birth, automatically age has to be calculated. Okay, age should not be an editable text box. Okay, why are we putting 2 here? Based on the date of birth calendar, what he is selecting, what user is selecting, age has to be automatically calculated. So meaning, on change of this, whenever calendar icon is getting changed, date of birth is getting changed, I have to go for an expression where I want to calculate the number of days or the number of years or the number of months. So those kind of operations has to be done based on the expression rules only. Okay, so we'll be working on this requirement now. For that, what we have to do, we have to create one declare expression rule. So let me create one declare expression rule. It can be created under decision category. So decision declare expression. So I'm selecting this rule. I'm going for calculate age. Okay, so here it should be asking for the one property. So declare expression has to be monitoring the property values. I mean, it has to calculate the property values all the time. So based on the input values, it has to be calculated with the it has to calculate the target values. So what is the input property that it has to monitor? So out of all these properties or any other properties, what is the property name that it want to monitor? So I want to monitor this with customer details dot h. Sorry. So what is the target property? What's the requirement? On change of date of birth, right? On change of date of birth, this has to be calculated. So this will be the input property and date of birth will, sorry, this will be the target property and this will be the input property. Okay, I want to monitor this age. Okay, so now I'm selecting in the framework context and create and open. So we are giving the name as calculate age. Clear? And if we closely observe, what is the ID for this particular rule? So we have given name like calculate age, right? So that is the name of declare expression. So are we finding anything here? We will not be finding anything. Why? Because this declare expression has to monitor only one target rule at a time, and that is the reason for each and every target. If you want to monitor, it has to be created with separate declare expression. So that is the reason the name or the ID of this declare expression will be the property name only. Clear? And here we have to perform some mathematical operation. Set age. Age value should be calculated automatically based on the calendar change. Okay, calendar here will be input. So whenever the calendar is changing, whenever the input is getting changed, age should be calculated. Okay, for that go for expression builder. If we go for the expression builder, it will be asking us to select the some functions. To select the OOTB functions, we have to go for this. So now tell me one thing. If I just want to uh, calculate the age based on the year. Suppose if I'm giving something like 2000, January 1st, 2000, how it will be calculating? It has to initially calculate. How PRPC will be doing this is, it will be initially calculating the number of days between the date and the to date and from date. Okay, so it will be initially calculating days between from date and to date, and then it will be again converting the number of days into years. Okay, it will be converting the days into months, then after into years. So finally the difference between date of birth and current date till date will be calculated, the number of days will be calculated, and then after it will be it will be converting itself into number of years. Okay, then we'll be getting the final age. Okay, so here we'll be having two challenges. So the first challenge here is we have to we'll be just giving the date of birth as an input. It will be the calendar format. So first challenge here is I have to convert this date of birth into days. Okay, and second thing is I have to convert the present system date into the days. So present system date will be something like DDMMYY format. So that has to be converted into some format, and the date what I'm trying to select as a date of birth, even that will be converted into some other format. I mean the number of days format, and between these 2 days difference will be calculated. and the difference will be again converted into number of years. So that is the concept you have to understand. So the first thing what I have to do is I have to identify the number of days for the date of birth what I'm selecting, and number of days for the system date. So till today I want to know the age rate, so I want to find out the days for the days for the till date. So once I identify the days for the date of birth and the current system date, I'll be finding the difference. So once the difference has been found out, PRPC can able to convert the difference into years. So that is the concept. So first let me select the days selection for the date of birth property. So for that there will be one OOTB property, OOTB action function. So all the functions related to date will be under date library, right? So date time, open this. Okay. So there will be something like date value. For each and every date, there should be one value. Okay, it might be the date of birth or the current system date. So for current system date, there will be one value, and for date of birth, there will be one value. So I have to find the difference between these two. So if I mouse over on this at the last in the screen, we can able to see example. So what is the example it is showing? The date value is the property, and if I'm trying to give something like 2009 January 1st, okay, it is having the value like 14 to 43. So that is the value what PRPC is expecting. Okay, so whatever the date we enter, that value has to be calculated. So that is the reason I'm trying to go for date value OOTB function to identify the date of birth value. Okay, so let me use this. So the date value of the date of birth what I'm selecting has to be calculated. So that will be under this page, right? Customer details dot date of birth. So we can able to test this also. If we just click on test, so there should be one value for this. Okay, whatever the value that user is entering, there should be one value for that. So let me select something like this one. Okay, so what it is saying, so if this is the date of birth, so the value for this date of birth is this one. So how it is how we are getting this value? So if I select any other date, if I'm selecting something, so value is getting incremented. Okay, if I'm selecting one date less, value is getting decremented. So for each and every date there should be one value. So once we identify the two different values, one for this one and one for current date, difference can be found out. So the question here is, how are we getting this value? Okay, so date value of this particular date is showing something. So if you mouse over on this, we can able to clearly understand. We can able to see that the value what we are seeing like 15,000 or so, 15,156 for this particular date is showing the number of days between January 1st, 1970. So in the description, we can able to see. So from the January 1st, 1972, the date what I'm giving it here, there should be one value calculated, and that is the difference of number of days between these two. So why PRPC is taking the standard value of 1970 is not sure. Okay, and that will be considered as a reference here. And from there, if I want to calculate the date value of the date of birth what user is selecting, it will be having one value. Okay, and my requirement here is I don't want to find the date value of this particular property calculated from 1970. My requirement here is there should be one value for date of birth and there should be one value for the current date. Ultimately, the number of days between date of birth and the current date will be getting one figure. So that figure will be divided by 24 or 36 or so. Finally, we will be getting the number of years. So that is my expectation. So let me take the difference of, let me take the date value of today's date. So today's date has to be calculated like this, at the rate today. So if we click on test, what it is showing. So today's date, it will be picking up currently from the system, and it is showing something like 18474. What does this mean? So it will be calculating the number of days between January 1st, 1970 to current date. Okay. So this is the thing what PRPC is doing. Understanding, right?
Yes, sir.
So you want me to show the calendar, or you got this figure how it is getting, right? So if we just check in the online calendar also, we can able to see the time, I mean calendar dates difference. So just give like January 1st 1970 and today's date, we'll be getting the same figure. So even PRPC is doing the same. So it is calculating the date value of this particular date what we are giving. It is taking the reference as January 1st 1970. Okay, so that is the thing, it will be identifying the value of that particular date, and based on that it is showing the number of days. But here I want to have the difference of the days count between my date of birth as well as this date. For that we have to go use one more function. So that is date difference. There will be one thing like date time difference or date difference also we can able to. There is nothing like this. So we can able to go for date time difference. If I mouse over on this, what I can able to see. So not duration, difference. So if I mouse over, what we can able to see, it will be asking us to enter two date values. In the first signature, we can able to see it is asking us to enter begin time as well as the end time. Okay, if we just enter these two values in this OOTB function like date time difference, then we will be having the difference between the date of birth date as well as my current date. Okay, so that is my requirement now. So within this, I want to go for date value. So date value of customer details dot date of birth and date value of this one. So if I go for like this, so I have to give one more bracket. So what I'm getting, so I'm entering something like date of birth. I'm entering this value. So are we getting any value? We're not getting any value. Why? Okay. So we'll be getting the just a difference count. And if we want to see the date in term months of an years or so, what we have to do is we have to again give comma and give it capital Y. So what it is saying, if we just give it capital Y, so this is the date of birth and current date is 2020. So what is the difference between these two? It will be having the year months. It will be having the days first. We can able to see the days also. So this is the number of days between 2010, that is date of birth, and the current system date. And if you want to get the number of months, just give capital M. That's it. So these are all the number of months. And if you want to identify the years, so this will be year will be calculated based on the days. So ultimately this property will be calculating the days only. So date difference between this value as well as this value, and based on this it will be calculating the number of months or years. Okay, clear? Any confusion here? So I'm submitting it now. So if I save this, what it has to do, so this declare expression rule will be always monitoring this input property only, not the target property. Okay, so what is the input property here? Date of birth. So date of birth is input property, and this property has to be always monitored whenever the value is getting changed. Target value has to, I mean, age property has to be automatically calculated. So that's it. We need not refer it anywhere. So that is the specialty of this declare rules, right? So if I just run the work object ID, I should be seeing this. So if I select the date of birth as this one, so what are we getting the age? Age is getting calculated automatically, right? We can able to see, no? So any value you change, value will be getting automatically changed. If we select anything like 2011, so 2013, so age has to be changed automatically. 2013, this one. So age has to be calculated automatically. Okay, clear? By default, whatever the thing we are selecting here, it will not be of less than 2010. If you see, By default, all the calendars will be set to 10 years only. If you want to change this to some other range, we have to do it at the settings. So let me redesign this. Let me put the date of birth first. Based on this age will be calculated, right? Now we have to change this to default from 10 years to some other value. It is showing some error. Okay, so let me uncheck this. If I uncheck this, I'm not putting any of the conditions. So in the presentation tab, in the general category, in the presentation tab, by default, we'll be having this value as 10 years, 10 years. Let me uncheck this. If I just uncheck this, we can be having this value. So submit this. Okay, I did not give this. Okay. So if we go to the presentation, we have to change these values. So on the age property only, we are giving something like declare constants also. That is the reason it is having male selected and it is expecting something. Yeah, that's okay. So this is working fine, right? We can able to change settings directly from here also. If you go to the presentation tab, we can able to have something like default value restricted to 10 years. Not allowed. So it is just contradicting with the other validations rules. You can able to try this, no issues. Okay. So this is all about declare expressions. Using declare expression, it will be continuously monitoring input values. Once the input values are changed, automatically target values are to be calculated. So this is one thing. Okay. So if you're clear, I'll have the same kind of example with the declare expression on it. Clear? Any doubts so far? Clear, right?
Clear, Chandra.
And Uma?
Yes, Chandra. Hello.
Yes, yes, okay. 1 second, please. I'm getting another call. 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry. So now we'll be working on one more requirement. So my requirement here is after user entering all his details like address details also, in the next screen, I want user to allow to enter his policy details. So here we will be capturing his policy details. So policy start date or policy end date, and based on this policy, what is the policy amount he's going for if you want to go for any EMI options. So based on this, arithmetical operations are to be calculated. So these kind of things we'll be working on now. Okay. So for that, what we have to go here is we have to create one new section, and within that section, our requirement here is customer can able to select his policy start date. Okay, policy start date will be one property which will be having one calendar or date. Okay, and he he can able to go for number of years also. So policy can be either 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, right? So he here he can able to go for tenure also. So tenure has to be selected, and based on this we will be automatically calculating his policy end date. Okay, policy end date also should be date. So the requirement what we are trying to work here is we'll be creating one new section, and in that section we should be making user to select his policy start date from when the policy will be applicable, and he will be allowed to change the tenure also. Tenure might be he can able to go for 1 year, 2 years or 3 years or anything. Based on this, if he's selecting today as the start date and if he's going for tenure of 3 years, then automatically policy end date has to be calculated exactly one day before this after 3 years. Okay, if this is 2020 August 1st, if he's going for 3 years, then 2023 July 31st tenure has to be completed. So this will be calculated. This date has to be calculated automatically on changing of these two. Clear, right? So here in this requirement, this should be considered as a target date, and this will be one of the input, and this should be another input. Okay. So these three properties I want to put in one data class if I want to reuse it. So I'm trying to create one new data class, and in that data class, I'll be creating one property for this one, and this one. I'll be creating one page having all these properties created, and then after we'll be creating one section, and within this section we'll be having all this included, and then after we'll be creating one new declare expression rule having this as target, and these two are inputs. Clear, right? So now let me create one new data class. So data class can be created on the sysadmin class. I'm giving something like chg data policy details. Okay, so let me create and open. So it should be concrete. So select this one and click on save. So data class will be created, and we have to create some properties. So let us have the either radio button or drop down here. We should be allowing him to select either 1 year or 3 years or 5 years only. Okay. And based on this, here he will be putting one date here. I mean calendar. He'll be selecting that, and from the radio button or the drop down, he'll be selecting one value, and based on this, this will be calculated. So now let me select one date for policies. One thing for policy start date. So it should be date. And for the tenure, I'm going for drop down, that is like pick list. I'll be adding the values there. And there should be something like policy end date. Okay, policy end date also should be date only. Save this. Here in the pick list, we need to have values like 1 year, 3 year or 5 years, right? So let me open that and show you how can we go for prompt list. I can directly go for 1, 3 or 5. Now let me show you how can we go for prompt list. So open that particular property and add something like prompt list. Let me go for radio buttons. So let me go for prompt list. So prompt list will be having two values, one for the display purpose and another for standard value. So whatever the standard value we are providing here, whatever the value we provided here, that will be calculated as a standard, meaning it will be calculated for the reference proper, for the processing. And the value what we are defining in the prompt list, the value in the standard value will be prompted with some other display name that should be provided here. So if I'm giving something like 1, and here I'm giving something like 1 year. So this is just for user interface purpose. Let me select 3 here. So whenever user selects this particular 3 years in the drop down or the radio button, automatically this 3 will be calculated in the processing. So save this. Okay, so we have created one class and we have created few properties. Now in order to have these properties used into our work class, let me create one page. I'm giving something like policy details page. So click create and open and give it like a single page. So this is the class that has to be referred to. Save this. So now create one section. So click on create and open. Okay, now let me include all these properties. So the property first thing like a policy start date, right? So let me take one calendar. So let me give the value like policy start date. For each and everything it is showing the same. Okay. So submit this. Sorry, revert it back to original. Submit this. And then after I have to go for radio buttons. So select this. So submit this. So let me have this 3 in a row. So let me change the modifications for this also. So we can able to change the presentations of this particular radio buttons, right? We can able to go for horizontal and we can able to go for segmented also. In the first class we have discussed. I'm going for segmented. So submit this. So this is how it will be looking like. Save this. And now we have to create one declare expression. Before that, let me create one flow action for this and link to this flow. So click on create and open and link that section here, also details section, and save this. And we have to make modifications to the flow rule as well now. So open this, go to the flow. make the draft on, take the new assignment shape. Okay, so link the flow action here. Submit this, make the draft off and save it. So now before running this, we have to write one declare expression, right? So let me create one declare expression rule. It can be created under decision category and click on declare expression. So calculate whatever the age, whatever the thing we give it here, that will not be matter. Right? So calculate policy end date. Okay, so this should be calculated on one target property, that is policy dot end date. So this is the target property. Click on create and open, and now select the values. So target value has to be calculated based on the input values. So click on this expression builder to add the input values. So click browse to go to the functions, and now my requirement here is whatever the age, whatever the policy start date that user is entering, that has to be calculated. That has to be calculated with some number of years. So number of years are to be added for this, and then it has to be finally get the value there. Okay. So for that there will be one function under date time. So all this will be related to date function only, no? So if we observe, we'll be having something like add calendar. So at the last we're trying to add one calendar in the policy end date. So that is the thing we have to observe here. So if I just mouse over on this, what we are getting? We are getting the usage like, let me reduce the size to see the full. So if you mouse over on this, so at the last example, so add calendar. After that we can able to see current date time -1 0 0 0 something like this. So what is -1, what is 0 0? So that usage we have to understand. So if I just take a screenshot and put it here, it will be easy for us. So here we can able to understand that. So current date time will be something like the date what they're providing. So here we have to give the current date time, and then after the second property is the years. Okay, the first property after in this calendar icon, we have to give the first property as the date, and the second thing should be given like an years. We can able to see here, right? And the second thing should be given like an years, and then after months. So as per this example, here we can able to see the date what is being provided here. It is reduced by -1 as per the years here. Okay, so the second value is related to years, and third value related to months. This is for days, and this is for hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, likewise. So the count will be as per this one. So initially date has to be provided, and date has to be reduced by -1 here as per the example, and it will be added with 0 months, 0 weeks, 0 days, 0 hours, likewise. So ultimately we'll be getting one value here. Okay, and this value will be again converted back to calendar. See, if we are using the control there. So the thing what we have to understand here is, in the example we can able to see the date first what they are using based on this current date, or based on the date what they are selecting, that is being passed here. Then they're trying to reduce -1 from the number of years. But now our requirement here is the customer is going for 5 years. So current date +5, we have to go for plus 5, right? +5, and should I have to increase any of the months? Not required. Okay, and if should I have to increase or decrease the number of weeks? Not required, but the number of days has to be reduced by 1. So if it is August 1st 2020, it has to be like July 31st 2023 if it is for 3 years. So I want to reduce 1 day, so there we have to go for -1. Okay, hours I need not change, minutes or seconds, so these will not be changed, this need not be changed. So the thing what will be changing all the time here is this parameter. The date parameter will be continuously changed. Why? Because I can able to have this effective from today or tomorrow or next week also. So based on that, policy date will be changed. So this will be changed, and years will not be, years also will be changed, and the days will be changed. So this is how we have to work on. So first let me use this one, add calendar, and here I have to pass the date, right? Let me pass the date as this one during runtime. So the date what user is selecting in the first calendar, that is policy start date, that has to be passed as a date. So it might be the current date or tomorrow's date also. Past date should not be applicable. So that will be restricted based on the validations. So policy details dot start date. So this will be the first date value for me. And after this, I have to enter the number of years. So the number of years should be either 1, 3, or 5 based on the user what he's selecting the radio buttons. That has to be calculated. So even that should be dynamic, right? So for that, let me select the value here. So policy details page dot tenure. So within this tenure property, I'll be having either 1, 3, or 5. Or suppose if I'm having something like 3 years selected also or 5 years selected in the back end, because of the standard value it will be having 5, so that will be calculated for the reference, not the 5 years what we are seeing in the user interface. Okay, so after this what I have to do, after years I need not make any changes for the months, so give 0 blindly to comma. Then after months also not required, days, weeks also not required, then I have to go for 2 zeros. And then after the days, so I have to reduce by 1 day, right? So give it like -1. I have to reduce the days, and I need not change anything with the hours. So give 0, give 0, give 0. Okay, clear what I'm trying to do? So now test this. If I just test this, what I'll be getting? So if the policy start date is today or yesterday, so if the tenure is 5 years, so we're not getting my. So did we make any mistake? So I'm saving it now. So policy details page dot policy start date, okay. Policy details page dot tenure, okay. -1. Dot tenure. So total will be having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 only we got right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I think we are doing mistake somewhere. So now we are getting correctly, say. So if I just enter 2020 as the start date and tenure as 3, so we are getting 2023 here. Okay, so calculation is perfect. So if I'm going for 5 years, even then I'm getting it perfect. But if I want to just reduce it by -1 year, sorry, -1 day, so we can able to see. So -1 is for what? So -1 should be from last but fourth. So we can able to see, right, policy start date is like July 31st 2020 and 10 years 5 years. Then we will be getting 2025 July 30. We have reduced by 1 day and we have increased by 5 years. Correct, right? So I'm saving this now. So run the work object ID. So that screen has to be created and it has to be having calculations automatically done. Okay. So this is how it will be looking like. Suppose by default will not be getting any value. Okay, why? Because this is getting blank and this is also blank. So if I'm selecting tomorrow's date, let us say August 1st. So automatically policy end date will be coming like there is nothing selected. Let me select 1 year and end date is calculated like minus 1 day plus 1 year. If it is for 5 years, okay. If it is for 5 years, automatically incremented by 5 and reduced by 1 day. Okay, we can able to see everything calculated whenever input value is changed or output value. I mean, second value is also getting changed. Okay. So declare expression tool will be always monitoring these two properties, either if this is changing or this is changing. So for the first time, or if we're trying to change this value and this value, it will be executed for 2 times. So based on the number of properties, those many times declare expression execution may be done. Clear? Any clarifications or any doubts? I'll give you one assignment for you. You can able to do that. So below this, you can able to have something like policy amount. Okay, so he can able to go for either 5 lakh policy or 10 lakh policy or 15 lakh policy. Okay, whatever the amount he is trying to enter, and he can able to go for EMI option also. So if he's entering like 2 lakhs, the whole policy amount is 2 lakhs, and if you want to pay it in 10 months, automatically monthly installment has to be calculated. Okay, if I'm trying to change the EMI period or like 10 months to 12 months, or if I'm trying to change the policy value from 2 lakhs to 5 lakhs, all the time target value will be calculated and it has to show the monthly installment. Okay, you try to practice it, else I'll tell you tomorrow. Any doubts?
Chandra, 1 second. Like whenever we are running the flow action, right? So we are going from the beginning of the assignment, right? Is it any options to run only for the current assignments, assignment from the flow action flow?
So if you want to have this only this flow action to be executed, correct? If I run the
Yes.
flow, first all assignment should not be executed, only the last one what you're trying to work on that has to be executed, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Then you have to make modifications in the flow, that's it. So put the draft on. If you want to use this, then directly go for this one. You directly connect from start shape to this one. So you can directly connect for this. Then automatically if you run this on the out of the start shape, you'll be getting this assignment only. Correct? Is that the question?
So we can pass on the connections only from start to end, right?
No, we
So
can change it. For the testing purpose, we can do that, no problem.
okay.
Any other doubts, Tulani?
Chandra, these declare expressions only follows forward chaining or backward chaining?
Both. It will be working for forward as well as the backward. So now what we're discussing is completely forward only. Forward meaning, yeah, when our input property is getting changed, target will be calculated. Okay, and you work on the one assignment, and if not, I can able to explain that assignment tomorrow also, and I'll tell you what is backward also tomorrow. Okay. So shall we meet tomorrow, or you want to have some time for the practice?